Hey, what's your self-talk? Jabari is here from What's Your Self-Talk podcast. And listen, I want you to download Anchor right now. Because chances are you're listening to this and you're saying, I got some things I want to share. I have some things that I've wanted to put in a podcast form. Here's the opportunity. Anchor is free. You can do it from your phone and you can be on all the different podcast stations all in one app. Okay. So what I need you to do is stop waiting for the perfect time, analysis paralysis. Do it now. You'll thank me later. What's your self talk? Hey, what's your self talk? This is Jabari and back again. Excited to be back last week. Actually did not release a podcast. So I'll get in there in a minute. But for those of you who are new, my name is Jabari. And the name of this podcast is What's Your Self Talk? And I always ask that question because I'm always wanting to challenge you by saying, what are the things you're believing, whether it's the good or the bad, and how can I have you ask yourself that question to start thinking about what are the things you need to change and how can you become better and expand your potential in your work life or just in life outside of work. And it's my job to bring you information that's going to challenge you on how you think and do things. So last week, I had a combination of just my schedule, everything coming together, and I usually record this podcast after I put my son to sleep, which is usually after 8 o'clock. And I've recently have been studying to take a exam to get my real estate license. So surprise, that's one thing I am working on. But in the midst of all that, I was wanting to really dig in deep into this topic on the social dilemma, which is a new documentary that came on Netflix. And my wife turned me on to it. And it was just very interesting, some of her actions. She had to delete her Facebook account and she was just talking about some of the things that she heard on this. And so my attempt last week was get some studying done, look at the documentary, and then from there, or at least get half of it done, and then go on and record the podcast. Well, what happened? It was pretty hilarious. I literally finished my studying, started watching the documentary. Well, as you can think, when you sit on a couch and you start looking at something, I don't know if it's you. It doesn't matter what it is. If I'm getting comfortable, I start getting tired. So I literally got tired and I told myself, no. You have to wake back up. You have to make sure that you record the podcast. And so I went to sleep looking at the documentary. I woke up and just the kind of Jabari I am is just the type of person I am is like I want to push past the uncomfortable and I always challenge myself in certain ways. And so I literally woke up out of my sleep last week and I started recording the podcast. And now I will only actually send this or post this if somebody actually asks. But I was recording a podcast and I was half asleep. And I yawned like 2 to 3 times. And it was hilarious. I literally was about to post it, but some just told me, just listen to it for a second. And I did. And it was quite hysterical. My wife listened to it. She was laughing just to listening to how I was stumbling over my words and how I was yawning probably every 2 to 3 seconds. And a good best friend of mine was laughing. So I say all that to say, excuse me for missing next week. We're back, and I am talking about the documentary, The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Now, this documentary is just really exposing the social networks altogether. And why I like this topic is because I specifically, in some of the episodes previously, I'll get you the number so if you would like to go back and listen to it, you can know. But it was episodes, I think it was Episode 16 and 15, I talked about it. And even in 17, talk about, protecting your subconscious mind. And I was just really taking a break from social media, fasting from social media. But also, as I was doing that, I was starting to understand, man, I have extra time. Man, I can think a little bit clearer. And a lot of things start coming to me where they did not come when I was on, social media. And so my definition of social media fasting is I do not have the apps on my phone. Now, for work purposes, I do use social media for business and I have it on my laptop. And it's very rare for me or any of us to actually use those on our laptop. But on my phone, I deleted all of those apps. And one, I just realized it's just a clarity in my thoughts and my thinking and thinking about how I can love and be available for my wife and my son and be more active with them. But then also it was very interesting just to see how much when I was wanting to go to my phone and when I went to my phone, I was looking for the app, but I didn't have any reason to look for it. I was just searching for the app. And that's what I would call me unconsciously doing something because I had caught myself after I realized there was nothing to go to. I'm like, what am I doing? And it is that type of action that you and I need to really check ourselves for. It's nobody else's fault but us. And when we lead to this mindless action, it invites other mindless things. So let's just say you were bored and you had an option to pick up a book, read a book, or you can go to social media. In this case, let's just say Facebook. Now, chances are, if you were to go to social media, you open it up, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get information from positive news, information, encouragement, Jabari, what's your self-talk, which is great, right? So, but then right after that, you could get somebody else rant, talking about, something that went bad in their day or a big announcement in their life or maybe family pictures, and which is great. And then as you go through that, you maybe start getting the news that's disturbing. And then you start, you see a video that's really like, I don't know, cats. It's about cats. And then the cat video turned into dog videos. And then you start looking at people doing silly things. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are these people doing this? But you're still looking at it. And you just start going down this hole of just so many different things. And your mind is constantly switching. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I want us to go back and instead of going to social media, what if we went to the book? Now, chances are the book is going to be on a topic that you want to read. And that is all that book is going to be related to. So it's, even if you were bored, you have the option to say, I want to listen purposely. I want to read something purposely. I can get that out. Excuse me. I want to read something purposefully in this book, and I want to gain all the specific information and knowledge on this topic. Or I can go to social media, in this case, Facebook, for example, and I don't know what I'm going to get. And I just want you to think about that. It's the difference between just that mindless scrolling and that meaningful read. Two different things. The thing that ignited you was just being bored. And so I talk about that because you have to be self-aware of what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And what are the things you're doing to damage just the most powerful thing we all have is our brain. And which leads me into the documentary, The Social Dilemma. And this really, really exposed more why I have went on a social media fasting, but just really understanding what are the things that goes on social media and how they build, the algorithms, how people believe false news and false information, and how that even turned to people just feeding their their need to be right. And so I'm gonna touch on all those in a minute, but one thing I highly, highly recommend you to do is as you look at this, and any of you listen to me, come to your own conclusion about what you believe is best for you. Because as I bring you information and I challenge you with this stuff, I do my very best to make sure that I prepare myself and I'm coming with you with the best amount of truth and facts from my point of view. And that is my job here in this podcast. So it's up to you to determine what course of actions you're going to take. But this is something that I believe is very true on how it does affect us. Just from me before even looking at this documentary and just seeing, myself going on this fast, I was more aware. So going into the documentary, a couple things that it talked about. And the first one I want to talk about is false news and false information. Now, this documentary was published this year, and it actually, had talk about some of the things when it came to the coronavirus and how it spread it. And one thing, I find interesting is like a lot of these people who are sitting down are people who build some of these algorithms, and algorithm is just, very, very smart AI technology that kind of predicts your behavior and adjusts your behavior that you use on social media and make sure that you constantly are seeing those things so that you can stay on the screen longer. Anyways, and the people who created these things for Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, all these companies, you can just see that they were nervous, but they also understood that this truth needed to be out there. So the first topic is false news. Now, I was surprised to realize that it's false news. It was, I'm kind of paraphrasing. One of the guys talked about false news on Twitter spread 6 times faster than the truth. And if you think about, if we allow ourselves to be on these social platforms and we are reading all the information on there as it to be true, but it is really false, then how much are we operating off of this false information and false news? And then even more, if we're operating off this false information and false news, then when are we going to be able to say if this is actually true or not? Do we ever get to that point? Because I think what's intriguing to us as human beings is interesting stories. And these interesting stories can sometimes lead to these conspiracies that goes on social media. Now, I'm not really a big person on conspiracies. Hopefully one day I can get my wife on here. She loves talking about them. And it's beyond my mental capacity to kind of even wrap my mind around those things. Do they exist? I do believe so. I'm just not the person that's going to have a deep conversation about that. But I do believe it arises from false news. Now, false news sometimes could be true, but here's another loophole or rabbit hole that you got to be aware of. For you to start trying to find out that and see if this is true and seeing if what they said is right or how did they spin that headline and made it seem like this when it was really that. That takes so much mental effort from you to try to understand that it will get you to the point where you either believe it's true or you go on to try to go figure out how you can prove it to not be true. Now, that's just how our brains work. We want to either go on a journey and we want to figure something out, and we want to be right. And maybe you just get that satisfaction. You're like, I knew this was not right, or I knew this wasn't true. But how much time, energy, and effort did you use, and was it really productive? So, in the documentary, this just talks about how the algorithms that are used to spread that false information spreads, and it gets in front of people on their feed, and they see it, and they start to believe it. And I believe this has happened, and this happened when it came to the coronavirus, COVID-19. And this is a very, I think, small example of the power of social media when it is used in a very bad and negative way. And however, corona is real and it is damaging, I believe the reaction that came from the coronavirus was way more than it needed to be. The precautions is very important, and I'm not taking away from that, but I believe it was a lot of false information that was spreading that caused panic. And to this day, I still don't understand, why were people going out to go buy toilet paper? What was the purpose out of all things for people to go buy? Why are you buying toilet paper and stacking up on toilet paper? To this point, I still don't know. But what I can believe is that it was circulated by somebody believing some false information. And due to that false information, when it had been related to coronavirus, it just caused a panic. And the thing that was interesting about that, I was in another state doing work. And that same state was miles away from my home state. And my wife called me and said, hey, can you see if you can find the toilet paper? Because there's none here. And I went out to the store and I couldn't find any toilet paper. And it was just like, I don't understand why this is an issue and why people, when it came to the coronavirus, are looking for toilet paper. So anyways, I believe that was circulated from false information. So false information circulates around social media. And one of the things that I tell you to be cautious of is when you see information, do your diligence, find good, reliable websites and sources to be able to filter whether the information is correct. And most of the time you want to have somebody who has a good track record. And for example, when you see big names like New York Times or the Chicago Tribute, these are the things that's been around for a very long time. Now, that's just small examples that I'm using, but I'm just saying find reliable sources like that. And there's other sources out there. Just not coming to mind, but allow yourself to find things that are going to help you understand what is true, what's going on, so you can be informed, but then also you can help yourself make an educated decision. And next is the truth of you do not always need to be right. And social media has a great way of feeding you, hey, if this is what you believe is right, let me put this more in front of you. If I believe toys came from Mars, I'll just say toys because I'm looking at my son's toys that's in the living room that I'm in right now. And if I believe toys came from Mars and there's enough people on social media that's saying the exact same thing, then guess what? I'm going to start getting things fed to me through social media, through their algorithms, on how this is true. And the repetition of something is going to eventually make you believe, well, this is true. It's a lot of other people that's believing me. And why I think it's very important to understand that we're not always right, we have to be able to accept when we're wrong about things. Now, I use that example about toys, but this can happen in, I our political beliefs, which is it's a very tough subject. It is our belief as spiritually what we believe in, and it can be a family, traditions. It can be tons of different things. But if we believe we're always right and we seek out those things, and what really happens is we really don't know what's true. So if you have false information and you always believe you're right, well, you allow false information that came out that now is like, oh, I knew this was true. And then you can go into this loophole where you always believe you're right. And I believe this is something, and the documentary just talk about this, on how this separates us as human beings. We isolate ourselves so much more. We don't want to communicate with people more. We don't want to talk to people. I'm somebody who loves interaction, face-to-face conversation. I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think if anything, things are going to get created so that those things are going to be more valued. And that's the problem about always being right, is when you are pointed out to be wrong, then that person or whoever is pointing that out, they are, not a friend, or it's not, you can unfriend them or you can unfollow them. And I just think if we live in a world where everyone is always right, then what's the point for rules? What's the point for us having directions and boundaries and guidelines? Because if you're always right, that's dangerous, because there's no end, there's no limit to that. And we have to be aware once again on how that can affect us, on how we live and operate, and have to operate with others. So one of the things that you have to be able to do, I think, when it comes to looking at that and thinking that you're always right, when it comes to social media and feeding into that, and also being aware of the things that's getting put in front of your mind, is just that. Is you, for one, you have to self-assess. Oh, I love Eric Thomas. The quote he always says, the ability to self-assess. And this is when you look at yourself and say, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? One of the things that I learned more and more about myself is that I'm a very emotional person. And so if I know myself to be a very emotional person, the reality about my emotions is that they are real, but they are not always telling me the truth. And I have to fight through those lies, because if I don't, I can always feel right according to how I feel. But the reality that comes with that is my feelings are a legitimate thing that goes and flows through my body. But that does not always mean that feeling I have is the right thing to do. And then my ability to self-assess and see that and know that, then I have to call out myself and say, that's not right. I don't care how you feel. It's not right to maybe do that. It's not right to say this to this person. It's not right to disrespect somebody. Even though you may feel in that moment it is right, that doesn't make it right. And so I think the way to really fix that one is your ability to self-assess. And when we can self-assess ourselves and say, okay, what am I really doing, and what monster am I creating within myself? And then being able to say, okay, I need to stop. And what are the things I need to do to stop? And then maybe I need to not be in this group. Maybe I don't need to be associated with these people. And maybe I just need to step back and do a fasting so I can really self-reflect and understand who I am and what are the things I'm struggling with. That is what I think is going to be super, super helpful for you. And last but not least, and I kind of talked about algorithms and how this is being created by social media for you to stay in front of it much more. But I'm gonna kind of use that with this next one, because I thought I was going to use algorithm as a separate category, but this one I think goes into my last one, is your family protection. Your family, needs to be protected. And me as a husband, me as a father, me as someone who very much is love leading and guiding and providing and doing and making the best example for my family. I think it's important for me as an individual to not only do all those things, but be aware of how that can affect how I love and treat my family. One of the things I found out through my fasting is that was not, I was able to find out, man, I needed to spend more time with my wife, or maybe do more things that's going to love her, that's going to serve her, make her feel valued, make her feel special, because she is. And I was able to realize, like, man, I have not done well of that. And I have to understand that I have a son that's going to watch me, and he's going to look at everything that I do and everything that um, I do and don't do, and when I'm on my phone, how often I'm on my phone. And I have to be aware of, he don't know anything about social media. And that's the thing, it's a learned behavior. He knows nothing about social media. When it comes to the extent of his phone, he wants to look at videos of himself. And so I say all that is because it's your job, it's your responsibility to protect your family, and you have to protect your mind in order to protect your family. The job of social media is to keep you on their site in social media as long as possible. And everything they put in front of you, and it's documented, does a great job at explaining this, is they're going to make sure that you stay on your screen, that you continue to look at more videos, you continue to stay on there, looking at different profiles, looking at different polls, commenting, looking at ads, and their job is to keep you there as long as possible. Now, when it comes to protecting my family, one of the things I do is provide through a lot of things that I do through social media. So guess what? I still will use these platforms to get me to some of the goals that I want to accomplish for my business. But I know that, and I am aware of that. So however you may see me, you may see me talk, you may even see me promote all the things that we have going on. That is a part of my plan. And that is the purpose. Be specific about why you're doing what you're doing. I posted on Facebook today, why do you do social media? And I just did a live. I wanted to get some feedback, and I got some great feedback from some people. And most of them was just saying, I get on there for friends, and that's pretty much it. That was the majority of what people were saying. And it was great. I had one good buddy of mine who I play sports with. He kind of admitted, hey, I got on there to look at friends, but then I saw mindlessly just going in different directions. And that is the thing that I wanted you to be aware of. And he was able to pick up on that, is that when we mindlessly get on social media and just get on there and just see what happens, that's the real danger that we are in. And if you let that go on for a extended amount of time, especially at a young age, you can do so much more damage to you, because you don't know how to interact with people. You just listen and watch videos, and that just creates a lot of, from what I've seen, depression for younger people, separation from older people, isolation for both of them. And I say all this to say is that social media is a great thing. I think it does great for a lot of things, whether it's family, whether it's business, or just even connecting with people you've never connected with before. But we need to be aware of what are also the things that can happen if we do not be careful. And so it's my job to bring you things that's going to stretch you, that's going to challenge you, that's going to ask you to ask that question, what's your self-talk? So this is another podcast. I'm going to end you here, and hoping that you take this podcast as a great chance to educate yourself more on the influence of social media and the things and how they are built and why they're built and what makes them money. If you have Netflix, If you have somebody else log in to look at Netflix, just go on there and look at The Social Dilemma. And it's an hour and 36 minutes. I've literally have gotten all the way but 12 minutes. Um, it was one thing that made me pause, and I just wanted to start recording. And one of the guys on there, he said something about being in the matrix, and he was talking about social media, the algorithms, the false information, everybody feeling like that would be right, so many other things. But he said, and I paraphrase this, like, how can you get out of the matrix if you don't know you're in the matrix? I have one question for you. What's your self-talk? Thank you for listening. Hey, what's your self-talk? Thank you for listening to today's episode. It means so much that you took time out to make sure you listen to this, but that means that it was good enough and it was valuable, and you now need to share that with someone else, because if you spend just this time with me, that means that someone else may just as well be able to listen in. My goal is to be able to get 100 subscribers, and so you actually spreading this to someone else, saying subscribe to What's Your Self Talk, will really help me get there. Leave me comments. If you're using Apple, go ahead and rate me. Give me some reviews. This is just going to help other people see me authentically on Apple Podcasts. And so my job is to continue to encourage you by asking you that one question: what's your self-talk? Thank you, guys.